Let's call this meeting to order. Call this meeting to order, please. Let's stand up for a moment of silence, and then I ask Mr. Syed to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Under the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, indivisible. It's still kind of...
Just let the record reflect that the only one absent tonight is Mr. Colunga. He called and explained why he was going to be out. Number 5, recommend approving the agenda for regular board meeting of August the 4th, 2009, with any corrections, deletions.
As stated.
All right, thank you.
Second.
Who made the Mr. Cortez, second by Mr. Syed. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Number 6, recommend approving the minutes of the special call board meeting of June 23rd, 2009, with any corrections.
Move to approve.
Moved by Mr. Syed, second.
Second.
Ms. Peña, second. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Recommend approving the minutes of the regular board meeting of July the 21st, 2009, with any corrections.
President, I move to approve items 6, 7, and 8.
Second.
I think 6 was already approved, but 7 and 8.
7 and 8.
Yeah.
I seconded
What's the motion, Mr. Escobedo?
to approve.
To approve the minutes?
No, 7 and 8. Of item
7,
7.
8
On 7 and 8.
7 and 8 on the agenda.
Right.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed?
Abstain? I wasn't present
Yes,
for
she
either
was
of those two.
absent. Okay. Pat?
Recommend approving the consent agenda.
Okay. Here we go. Being asked to discuss the following items under general function, number 8,
And also.
number 9. Okay.
Catalina asked for 10.
You want to change number, also you want 10? Okay, 10 also. Number 16, 17, 22, 30. On the personal matters, of course, 38, 39, 46, also 48, letter A, and D. Number 49. Okay. Anyone else? Of course, we need to approve.
I think
We need to approve all personnel from 34 to 45.
B 47A.
47, 48, and of course, we already have 49. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Mr. Aguilar, with all due respect, we kind of got confused over here and not quite sure what the items were.
Okay.
If you could please repeat them for the
That's
record.
No problem, no problem. Number 8, number 9, and number 10. Okay. 16, number 17, 22, 30, 38, 39, 46, 48, letter A and letter D. and 49. But then again, those we need to come back to close meeting and approve from 35 to 49, okay?
It's 34 through 39.
Excuse me, 34 to 49.
Mr. President, I move to approve the consent agenda as recommended by administration.
All right, we move to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay.
Superintendent's report, conference presentations, recognition of services provided by Operation Lone Star 2009.
Mr. Springton, please.
Thank you, members of the board, people in the audience. It does give me great pleasure to bring out some recognition for a program that we've been doing for several years. And Dr. Montoya and I have worked on it for the last couple of years, and we've also worked with our community. We've worked with the county representatives. We've worked with our city representatives. And it is to provide health care and dentistry to our citizens of Brownsville. And what I have noticed in the past several years, and since we have been working with pandemics, and since we've been working with illnesses, and we've been working with things, it gives us an operation to really take a close look at what would happen in our society or the city of Brownsville if an emergency took place. And it gives us operational procedures on how we can work with the city, work with the county, work with all of our entities so that we can show that we will have a safe environment, that we will have procedures in place that we can work with, that can help keep our community safe. And so at the moment, what I'm going to do is have some people come up and stand around us as I give them a recognition. The Board of Trustees and Interim Superintendent, Mr. Springston, recognizes, first of all, Mr. Lopez, Operations Officer, for assisting with Operation Lone Star 2009, which was held at Bestedo Middle School on July 27th through the 31st. This annual event provides free medical and dental services to the entire Brownsville community. And I'm going to have Mr. Lopez give us just a little synopsis of what happens, and I'm going to have the other people, Dr. Montoya, Ms. Cardenas Rubio, Alma. Thank you. Stand up here with me, if you don't mind. Chief Garcia. You didn't know it, but here you go. And all of his people that help with operations. Omar Frisler, is he here? Omar? Thank you, sir, for your service. Juanita Escamilla? Juanita? Thank you for your service. Cameron County Health and Human Services. Thank you. Thank you. Victor Rivera. He's not. Can you get that? And Fidel Calvillo. He's out too. And this is yours.
Good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of Cameron County Department of Health and Human Services, thank you for allowing us to be a part of BISD for a week. And what I mean be a part of BISD, Operation Lone Star is actually a strategic national stockpile exercise. Now, what we do in reality is we're practicing for a mass casualty event, okay, or a mass vaccination event. one of the few school districts in the nation to practice it is BISD. And for the past 7 years, they have been an integral part of our training and training our community, but more importantly, responding to the citizenry of Brownsville, okay? They are one of the few school districts in the nation that are prepared to respond to, God forbid, any mass casualty event. That doesn't sound like much right now, but this fall, we're gonna be practicing it in earnest, unfortunately. Unfortunately, we foresee due to the H1N1 virus, we see an imminent outbreak in the valley, and the best thing about it is BISD is going to be ready to respond to it, and so will the county. But this has been a event now that's been going on for 7 years, like I mentioned earlier. But one thing I can say, of the few school districts in the nation, I mean very few, that's literally under 100, okay, in the whole USA, we are prepared to respond to an event as best we can be, okay? And I would just like to, again, take the opportunity to thank BISD for allowing us to be part of the community, because we are the county and we are part of the community, but nonetheless to practice our exercise and for BISD to practice along with us, okay? Thank you very much.
Nice, brother. You doing good? Thank you very much. We want to thank you for the service you have provided our community. I know that our sinistry is much better today than it was a couple of weeks ago, and it was because to your efforts and the services that you have provided to our city, and also, and I know many of the parents were our parents and kids. So the health services you provide is outstanding, and we thank you for that.
Dr. Lopez, I want to thank you and your organization. I know during the H1N1 scare, you were here at BISD for many hours and on weekends, and you and your staff were putting in a lot of time, and we really appreciate that. We appreciate your hard work.
President, just very briefly, so I'm familiar with what you do, and I know that it entails a lot of planning, a lot of strategy, and many long hours, so thank you for the good job that you've been doing.
Anyone else? Ms. Peña?
Again, thank you. We appreciate it. It's people like you that make a difference in our health. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Pat?
Item 2, presentation of the Brownsville Independent School District Quarterly Investment Report for the period ended March 31st, 2009.
Mr. Springton, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. If there are any questions at this point, glad to have Mr. Reese answer those.
Anyone else? None? Pan?
Item 3, presentation of the Brownsville Independent School District Quarterly Investment Report for the period ended June 30, 2009.
Mr. Springton, please.
Again, if you have any questions at this point with our quarterly investment, I'd be glad to answer them.
Anyone else? None? Pat?
Item 4, presentation of notification of contingency fund change orders.
Mr. Springton, please.
I have Mr. Tapia here and his staff to talk about any of the change orders that we have. I know that both libraries, we've added an awning for rain. And I believe that we have ground allowance for Thomas Keller and Mazzano for landscaping. This already was a part of our bond and part of the package, and we're just letting you know the amount that was being spent for the landscaping.
Questions? Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Tapia, the landscaping wasn't part of the original bid? 'Cause I noticed you're using a contingency change order for the landscaping. And it seems that it's just using up the entire contingency allowance balance.
Mr. Springston, President
And-
Aguilar,
and-
members of the school board.
And that's for both of the projects. That's for the Keller
Both.
project and the Manzano project.
That's correct, Mr. Zayas. What we're doing here is, in the project, aside from the contingency fund, we're not touching that money. This, we have already in the building plans and the specs, allowances for each project for the landscape packages. We established $150,000 for the elementary, $250,000 for the middle school. I believe it's $250, yes. And what we do is, once the project's awarded, we work with the landscape architect that designed the plans and with the contractor. Many times they go over the budgets that we want to create. So to try to keep the cost within a certain budget, we create an allowance. And once the project's awarded, we work with the contractor to award the package. And the original prices were over the allowance amounts. So we work with the landscape architect and the installer to make some minor changes to bring the price down to fit within the allowance project. And that's all we will authorize. We won't exceed this amount. If we exceed the allowances, then we have to go dip into contingency to make up for it. So these are completely separate and aside from the contingency and betterment funds. And this is just to let you know that we're going to use the allowances that were set up from the beginning.
The only reason I'm asking you is because, well, the documentation shown to us, this is original owner contingency allowance sum, and it seems like it's coming from the contingency funds.
I'm not sure where I don't see the word contingency. It's an allowance expenditure authorization is the way this
Okay,
is labeled.
it's on PBK's, I don't know, do you have the pages? Or do you, I don't know how your backup
Not
is.
the way you have them. But
The way our pages is, it would be on our page, numbered 45 and 49.
They worded it contingency allowance.
it's worded landscape irrigation allowance, where it says description of work under authorization number 5 for Keller.
Yeah, I'm looking at the PBK allowance expenditure authorization for Thomas Keller.
Right?
And then if you go down to where it has it in a block, see how it has 144,500 in black?
Okay, that's the standard form they use. The description of the work explains it a little better, and it's in bold letters, description of work, landscape irrigation allowance.
Okay.
So,
So then when it says original owner contingency allowance sum, that it doesn't take out from that?
no, it doesn't take out from the contingency allowance, which is
Okay, so it's,
a very different part of the contractor and specs, and it's in a different section, and that's what we're dealing with. The other issues that we brought up last time, some changes that are happening with,
this is just an allowance, not a contingency allowance.
that's correct.
Okay, that's my main question. Thanks.
Anyone else?
B, standing board agenda items. Item 5, board calendars.
Mr. Springton, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Got a busy week set up ahead of us. When we look at some of the dates and some of the activities that are taking place, we do have our administrators coming back to duty. They started today. We have campus administrative in-service at the Holiday Inn from 7:30 till 4 o'clock on Thursday. We have a retreat for several of us that I will be kind of doing double duty myself and working with the CFO, and we'll be traveling to Edinburgh to attend a workshop at Region 1 to talk about 3646, some of the things in House Bill 3, and look at some of the finance options that we have this year dealing with the stimulus funding. Also on Friday, we have a special guest that will be here for curriculum, working with our principals, Dr. Daggett. For those of us who attended the workshop that was at the island, he was a speaker for the board workshop. Excellent speaker. He will be with us all day and have an opportunity to share his insight in the future of education and the progression of education with us on Friday. Next week, I do see that we do have our new teacher in service, which is at the CAB on the 13th, which is from 7:30 to 4 o'clock. And I do want to remind the board that we do have our new teacher dinner at the Holiday Inn, and that's at 5:30.
Thank you, Mr. Springton. Any questions, gentlemen, ladies?
The next item on our agenda is a public comment period. This is a time for citizens, staff, or students to provide their comments to the board. Statements and questions from the audience will not be permitted during other portions of the meeting, so please let us hear from you now if you have comments to present. To have your comments heard tonight, your name and the subject matter of your comments must appear on the sign-in sheet, which is located at the rear of the meeting room. Each speaker will be limited to 5 minutes to complete his or her comments. With all due courtesy, the presiding officer will strictly enforce that time limit. If a group of people want to be heard on the same topic, the board asks that they designate a spokesperson to avoid needless repetition. The board has adopted rules to preclude the abuse of open forum by, for example, anyone uselessly repeating the same comment or complaint meeting after meeting. All participants must understand that if your comment in the judgment of the presiding officer constitutes a complaint against an employee or officer, the presiding officer will interrupt and ask you to stop and direct you to proceed with the BISD's formal grievance procedures, be that DGBA, FNG, or GF local. With those cautions in mind, we will now be glad to hear the general comments.
Thank you, Pat. First speaker is Mr. Don Ciclopper.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for allowing me to address you tonight. I'm here on three different hats. I'm wearing 3 hats tonight. One is a teacher, one is a taxpayer, and one who's concerned about our environment. I'm a teacher at Porter, and at Porter, sometimes, as Mrs. Ayala knows, my room is in B Hall. But B Hall at Porter is known as the school's deep freeze. Some teachers, it's so cold in B Hall that some teachers, to avoid the cold, they'll walk around outside the front of the building or around the courtyard to keep from walking down the cold hallway. I'm just outraged as a taxpayer that the chillers are run to such cold temperatures in the hallways and rooms in almost every school in this school district. There's no reason for the temperatures to be at such low temperatures. My room last year, I actually got pneumonia because for a while the temperature in my room was at 68 degrees. 68 degrees. And the reason it was 68 degrees is because the room next door to me had been at 66 degrees, so they put blocks in the vents to shove the cold out of that room, and they shoved it into my room. And then, after I complained, they put vents, restrictors in my room and shoved it in the teacher across the hall from his room, and he froze to death. And the cold just got shoved from one room to another room. And the whole thing of it is these chillers are being run at ridiculously cold temperatures. And it's not just Porter. I did curriculum alignment writing for the district for math this spring and over at Hannah. And at Hannah, the room we were using was set at 68 degrees. 68 degrees. We sat there with coats on while we were doing our work. It was ridiculous. This is a problem all over the district. There is no reason for these cold temperatures. I walk in here this afternoon, your thermostat's set on 70 degrees, ladies and gentlemen. It wouldn't hurt this school board to sweat a little bit for the taxpayers of this district. Let's turn that up at least a couple of degrees. We don't need 70 degrees, please. That's a ridiculous waste of the taxpayers' money. Last winter, when it was 52 degrees outside, I am not exaggerating, it was 52 degrees outside. I walked in the building and all the air conditioner chillers were running wide open. It must have been 45 degrees in some of the rooms. The windows in my room when I walked in were totally frosted up. You couldn't see out of them at all. It was unbelievable. Next year will be my 20th year with this district. And this has been going on for all 20 years. This is nothing new. This is nothing new. And every time we complain, we're told, oh, well, this is controlled by the main office. The main office is taking care of it. Well, I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but the main office is taking care of this. They're not doing much of a job. There needs to be an investigation on what's going on, why these rooms are being chilled to such cold temperatures. Now, some halls are not cold, and some others are freezing. I have team meetings in H Hall, and when we go in there, we have to wear coats. The thermostat in that room is always at 67 or 68 degrees. It's always 67 and 68 degrees when we go down to Ms. Lozano's room. Please, if this is being controlled by the main office, let's put some real controls on it and raise these temperatures up where the taxpayer is not being bitten by such a severe tax bite to run these chillers at such cold temperatures. Okay, I've talked to you as a teacher, I've talked to you as a taxpayer, let me talk to you as an environmentalist. Okay, the other teachers at Porter used to make fun at me because I always drive economical four-cylinder cars. That is, they always made fun of me until last year when the price of gas got to $3 or $4 a gallon, and then they tried to buy my cars from me. Okay? So they're not making fun of me anymore. But what appalls me is that PUB generates all of its electricity by polluting coal-fired generating plant on the Texas-Oklahoma border. It's one of the worst polluting establishments in the United States, and that's where all of our electricity comes. Brownsville's an ideal location to put up windmills. And Vermilion campuses are an ideal place. They're so close to the Gulf of Mexico, it would be an ideal place for the school district to put up an experimental windmill to see if the district could generate electricity at a lower cost than what they're currently paying PUB back. And maybe you could even sell some of it back. I would dearly love for the district to explore the possibility of using wind-powered electricity. And that's all I came to say. Thank you for your time and attention. Thank you very much, and I hope we all have a good year next year.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Item 8, recommend approval to adopt the Student Code of Conduct for 2009-2010 school year.
Superintendent, Ms. Peña, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know we postponed this one for just a couple of weeks because we had some questions that were here. I have Ms. Fox that is available and her staff.
Peña.
Thank you. Yes, I had a couple of questions on some of them that were listed. I remember I emailed you the questions before. For example, the display on turning on or use a cellular phone as per campus rules, leaving it up to each individual campus to see how they're going to run that. And I kind of foresee a major problem when you have some strict disciplinarians that will just the fact that you touched your phone or maybe looked at it for a time, as opposed to someone who's a little bit more lenient. I wanted to find out if there's a way we could, it's going to be hard, but have a even kill across the board, because I know in some schools they get picked up the minute you looked at it because you're not supposed to have it. I can relate to that. And I know at other schools they're told, put that away, you know you're not supposed to look at your phone. So I was wondering, do you have anything set that will avoid us having complaints from parents where at one school it's not as severe, and at another school it's corporal punishment to the max, and of course, taking the phone away is what I mean. Do we have something set that that won't occur? And I know it's difficult because everyone has a different style of management. I'm just trying to be proactive and not have complaints because it's up to the person of the school. And we know that everyone has a different way of managing. The style is different.
I understand that in House Bill 3 that there is a, and correct me if I'm wrong, Minnie or Ms. Fox, there is a new regulation that is trying to be translated as I speak, and that translation has to deal with using a cell phone in a school zone. And then our translation was whether or not it was for someone that was driving a vehicle or if it was actually someone who was in a school zone. And so we have some questions that are going out to try to answer that, because we also have to find some signage that we have to put up saying that there is no cell phone usage in this school crossing area. So there's some definitions out there, Minnie, or is there anything that you can add to that or that you're aware of?
It is a concern as far as, we did realize that if we have 40, 50 schools, we're going to have 40, 50 versions. So
Yes.
one of the recommendations was that if the, Ms. Fox was going to bring it up to the cabinet, if the AAs could get together with their campus clusters and come up with something that could be used district-wide.
Okay, that answers my question, because that's really what I'm looking at. Thank you. Okay, and the next one that I had was fail to comply with directives given by school personnel, expulsion for not following a directive. I wanted the directive's a little bit broad. Directive meaning stop talking, but ma'am, you talked. I told you to stop talking.
Yeah, there was a lot of translation into this because
On that particular 2 pages where the directives, the consequence there is strictly in-school suspension, out-of-school suspension, talking to the parents. It is not an expellable offense. On that particular list, it is not an expellable offense, ma'am.
No, I understand that, but believe it or not, we have students who in-school suspension is like, you know, the end of the world, because these are your average good students who've never in their life, all the way to their senior year, never had ISS, and all of a sudden,
Right.
I got ISS, and it's like you go home and everybody in the household, man, you're the only one of 5 kids who ever has ISS. Of course, it becomes a problem the rest of your life in your home. So my point is how not failure to comply with a directive, meaning how broad is that directive?
The general usage is that if a student is sent to a particular classroom, he doesn't go there, he's roaming around the hallways, then they will send him to ISS. But it's something real specific.
Okay, and I just wanted to make sure it wasn't broad. Like I said, if you're speaking to an administrator, and sometimes kids just want to say how they feel because they feel that something was left out, and I just don't want to hear that because he said, well, but ma'am, and he was told to stop talking, and the directive is stop talking, but he says, but ma'am, well, you talked. I just want to make sure it doesn't we don't get a little bit
No,
feather
it
naked
is
with
not that stringent, ma'am.
Okay. The next one is number 4. The principal's decision to, these are 4, of course, these are numbers that are the ones that I
Right.
thought of concern. The principal's decision to suspend is final and cannot be appealed.
Okay. Not being appealed means a formal process where the parent is given notice of the meeting. There is no, what they generally do is that they communicate with the parent. If the assistant principal assigns OSS, out-of-school suspension, the parent is not in agreement, then she has the authority and the right to go to speak to the principal, which is the general standard.
Okay.
When not
Which is what
appealable
we
means
want.
it's not a formal process.
Okay, that one. And of course, the last one is a real big one, and I'm sure you take care of it. The beginning and ending time was left out on page number 2 when you were transporting a juvenile.
It was added, the departure and arrival time was included, ma'am.
Okay.
It's now included in the new
Yes,
student
because I
code of
think
conduct.
that time is really crucial when you're transporting a juvenile, especially a female.
That's correct.
Okay, well, those were my questions. Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, do I have,
I just have a concern.
Okay.
When the students get sent to ISS, my concern is that they're not giving the work while they have to be in ISS, and I think that in the campus, we need to be a little bit more responsible to make sure that that is given to the student and that the student is doing what he needs to be doing at ISS. Because it's not what they used to call back in the 80s. What was it called? Can't remember
Study
what they used to call it. Study hall, yes. Which now I think we need to follow, because a lot of those students, when they get sent to ISS, then they come back, then they're lacking all these grades, and then that, sometimes it could be like Ms. Peña says, that type of a student that, you know, just broke the rule a little bit.
Right.
Got caught, and there he goes. So I have a concern to make sure that we place something in there where at the same time the student is protected as well, that, okay, you know, I don't know what I'm going to do. Of course, they're already teenagers, they should know. But that we take the initiative of letting them know this is going to be your homework, this is what you're going to have to do at ISS. Because obviously we have teachers there also that help them out with the work, correct?
That's correct.
Mr. Aguilar, if I may, and I want to bring up a point. I know that happened, I think it was last year, with a student who apparently got permission to leave class early, but went and sat outside in front of the school with a camera, so he got busted. So when he was brought in, he said, the teacher said I could leave early. But when they went to the teacher said, I never said that. So the student went home and asked the parent, why did the teacher lie? Well, because the teacher can get written up for that. You just get ISS. Who do you think is going to be sacrificed here? My point is that that student went in and traded 5 days of ISS for 3 weeks of detention after school. And that student found out that he could only have asked for 1 week of detention, and he volunteered 3 weeks. Don't give me ISS because I will fall behind, because in ISS, the students complain that they don't get their work. My point is, can we have someone monitor it a little closer? Because the complaint is, when you go to ISS, you might as well send them home and not know anything's going on in class. Can we do something so we can please monitor all our schools? Because she's very right. When we have students trading in ISS for after-school detention because they are working on the GPA, staying in the top 5, and they get caught for something, you know, that they didn't think was a big deal, but it was. Can we monitor it so we don't have that lack of teaching for those students when we send them into ISS? Can we do that?
Yes, ma'am, we can. We can visit with our principals on their procedures on that this week.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it.
And not only that also, but those on the, what you used to call the alternative center, now it's called what, the Brownsville Learning
Center.
Academy.
Academic center.
Academic, sometimes our young people are sent there and followed with the work and whatnot. Somewhere along in the same premises they're talking about, those need to be monitored very closely. You got 2 administrators, both principals. They have the same counseling support system. They should be in contact with these young people because some of them go for a long period of time. And I mean, I can say that it happens that sometimes you don't monitor very closely. Some of them do not send their work on a consistent basis. I'm saying they're not going to send it, but it consisted an appropriate regular schedule, so those young people might not get in time. So, you know, it's just a matter of monitoring some of this program very closely, so that some of these kids do not fall between the cracks.
Actually, in
Mrs.
the
Springsteen?
back,
Yeah.
they have their own teachers. The schools do not send the assignments. They do the work there.
And that will apply to middle school also, not just our high school students, please.
So all those are young people that go there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else? Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Mr.
Second.
Second by Ms. Peña. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, Pat?
Item 9, recommend approval to adopt Update 84, local and miscellaneous policies.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Just a little background, we did have a policy meeting that covered Update 84 back on June 22nd. We're bringing this back to you because we had some members that were a part of that policy committee that weren't here, and so it was more of an update and bringing you the update so that we could put these back into our local and miscellaneous policies.
Mr. Cortez?
Yeah, Mr. Springsteen, just to get clarification, Update 84, local are updates that are made as in response to a change in legal policy, and so we have to update our local policy. That's correct, right?
That is correct, sir.
Now, on miscellaneous policies, as I was going through them, I noticed on page 126, DG local.
What
at the
what
super-
page is that on?
26?
Literally 126.
126. DG local down towards the bottom of the page. It says the superintendent's request, language has been added. Is this, this particular policy seems to be in conflict with one of the policies that we had discussed that would allow some of these people that offer different types of services. I mean, I know that nobody wants to be disrupted during lunch, but if you give, overall authorization, as we discussed at that last policy meeting, to, Delta Dental or whomever it is that's in the district providing their service, and they happen to be in the teacher's lounge, and that employee, whoever it may be, whether it's a office person or a teacher or a custodian or whomever the case may be in that lounge, if they come in and it happens to be their lunch hour, it seems like that may conflict with what we had discussed on that new policy that we're bringing in, to give them access with exception of certain days, for example, tax testing days and other key days where the district just says you're not allowed access. So I see that it's at superintendent's request, and I'm just wondering, why is this being presented in this manner, after.
Fox?
Thank you, Mr. Springston, Mr. Aguilar, members of the board. Mr. Cortez, on page 167, I believe, is the policy that you refer to, DG local. And if you look at that page, we've made the language rather broad. The addition says no commercial solicitations of teachers or staff members will be permitted during these hours, during the school hours, and then highlighted in blue there, it says unless authorized by the superintendent or designee. It gives the superintendent that ability to take care of those tax days and any other days that the superintendent deems appropriate to restrict people coming through there. But basically what the policy says is that staff members, teachers and staff members are protected from interruption as much as possible while on duty, including preparation period and the employee's duty-free lunch period. It doesn't mean that the employee can't seek out someone who might have been given permission on campus, but what it means is that it's not mandated. We try to protect the duty-free lunch period and the preparation period for the teachers. And then that second sentence that I read earlier says whatever is authorized by the superintendent. So it allows the superintendent to set up whatever schedule he or she might deem appropriate to allow any type of interruption at the campus.
So the update on page 126 is the current language, and the new language is what's on 167?
No,
Is that correct?
No, what is on page 126 is just a brief summary and why it was done of page 167. What TASB does is that they rewrite our policy, and they, on page 126, give you a very brief blurb of what the change in the policy is here. They're one in the same, the short little paragraph on 126 is just a quick summary of what it was that was done on page 167.
But when we come in and make a policy recommendation the way we discussed at that policy meeting, that we're probably going to be doing sometime this month, we would just amend that language?
Right. And as you see, just on, as another example, on page 126, right above that is DEC local. And you see about the third line down, it says, upon an employee's death and still working for the district, the reimbursement for days. That's just a brief summary of what we actually did in our policy, DEC local, to add the concern that I believe Ms. Pena had at the time.
What page is that on here?
Page 126 has the summary.
Right, but no, the other one.
Page 162, about in the middle of the page. Right under reimbursement upon retirement, we've added a section, reimbursement upon death.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
And so with the adoption tonight, that will become policy immediately.
Now, is this, I'm sorry, Mr.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
This is effective, this is not retroactive.
Right, it's effective when the board approves this policy, which would be tonight if approved.
And that would be for any future employees,
Yes, ma'am.
not anything like in the last year or so.
Be from the time it was approved henceforth.
Let me ask you this, and Mr. President, Mr. Springston, and board members. Was there a possibility of putting something in that would make it retroactive 12 months per se? Would that have been a legal issue, Mr. Saldaña, that we could have looked at, or?
Yes, that probably would be a legal issue. I really don't know.
Did we look at it?
I
You
did
remember
not
I
look
asked that
at it.
question last
I
time?
was not asked that question. I did not attend the policy meeting. I was not requested. So I really wouldn't have an answer for you at this point in time. Generally, retroactive actions by a governmental body that would require money to be paid out are generally not looked well upon, or there's the issues of gifts of public funds and also issues of inconsistency. However, going forward, the analysis is a little bit different. If you want to change it, with these changes that are there, you certainly have that ability to do so.
Because the reason we brought it up because of the tragedy that we experienced last year with some of our, and this is the reason we're bringing forth the change, and I would like for them to be able to participate and maybe benefit from the changes that were made. And it's unfortunate that it takes a tragedy as big as the one we had for us to look at something that for years, and I mean for years, someone has been after something like this. And I'd like to see, possibly looking at to see what the ramifications are of going in and making it retroactive the previous school year. I understand that, you know, people might not like that because maybe something happened 2 years before, 3 years before, but there's a lot of things we do in this district where people don't like the way we spend our money. But something like this, I do not see too many people frowning upon because we're benefiting those that gave their life to us. And these were life administrators and educators that I'm speaking about, and I'd like to see we can look into if that's a possibility. I'd like for us to just look at it, see if it's possible.
In line with what she's speaking about, I guess what she's trying to say is, if we adopt the policy as it is, can we re-adopt the policy later on?
Certainly, you could amend the policy
We
at
can
any
amend it.
time.
So we can go ahead and adopt it tonight, and we want to look at that issue. You want that issue to be looked at, I guess you can ask Mr. Saldaña and then get an opinion on it.
Would there be a problem? What's our deadline for adopting the policy?
Local policy is at the board's discretion.
So would there be a problem instead of adopting and amending that we table to see what the possibilities are of adding that before we actually adopt it as a whole?
The only policy, problem I would see, ma'am, would be in the event, God forbid, a tragedy would occur between now and when
I totally agree with you. I just went
now
blank.
and when you did it,
No,
would
then
not
yes.
affect again.
Then yes, then
Our administration's recommendation is to adopt it as is so that it could be effective beginning tomorrow. And then if you have some other changes that the board decides to do.
we can amend it. I agree with you totally.
And we talked about your policy, that item at the policy meeting.
Mhm.
We're gonna have that other meeting sometime in August again, so.
Okay.
You can bring us that, and if we need to, we'll amend it.
I would appreciate that because that would be something that would help a lot of our families here in the community.
Ms. Fox, the way, and just going to DG Local, the way it is on page 167, the portion that's highlighted in blue, is that been added, and are we to assume that the other portion is the way it was? Because we don't have any strikeouts, all we have is additions.
Right, that's correct.
Okay.
We're just adding the two little phrases that are on your.
And this is just to provide more protection to the teachers?
Right.
Are the is the superintendent gonna be able just to, the way it's written, blanket, these, designate the principals to do that?
Yes.
Because then it would kill the spirit of the policy if he just blanketed and allowed the principals to be the designees.
Would be of certainly the superintendent's discretion as to whether he or she made that decision and/or delegated it to a designee. I believe in my conversations with Mr. Springston, he intends to be at this time, the superintendent, as opposed to designating someone to do it for them.
No, and Mr. Sias, also if I can add to that, you know, we should probably approve this today. I still don't like the language on that second line where it says, no commercial solicitation of teachers or staff will be permitted during these hours. So if they're saying during the lunch hour, well, sometimes educators have, you know, a conference period where they're maybe in the lounge just getting something, or I mean, I don't know. I mean, but where they just happen to walk in and get some water, or they're making copies, or wherever these people end up setting up, if they happen to be on a break other than their lunch hour, then they may contradict, because everybody has to take, they can't all go to lunch at 12, you know? They all have to have a rotating schedule. So the way that language is set up, it almost, you know, contradicts what the intent would be. Because if these people are going to come in, I'm assuming they're going to be in the campus a whole day. They'll pick a campus or two, and they're there all day long. But if you go out at 10 and you go out at 11, am I supposed to leave when you're out during your duty-free lunch? Am I not allowed to be in there? And I guess that's where we'll ask for more clarification as that policy evolves.
I'm sure we're going to have quite a few tweaks in these policies as we go back and look at it.
Yeah, Mr. Aguilar and Mr. Springsteen, if I may suggest that we put in there, because a common place that every teacher goes through is your teacher's lounge. There's their bathroom. There's everything there that they need, copy or what have you. Maybe we could put on there that we would not allow them to be in a teacher's lounge and have a designated area or room that they could use, because you're correct. If it's a common area where all the teachers have to go through at different times of the day for whatever, that could pose a problem in someone. You know, some people would like their lunch hour to be nothing but lunch hour. Don't want to listen to anything else other than just what they have to do, or use it as a conference room because something's happening in their classroom. So we could maybe put that into it.
Springsteen?
Didn't we have, Ms. Fox, didn't we come up with, I read it today, I did not get a chance to open it up. It was an email that came from our associations. George, I don't know if you sent me that or not. I can't remember. There was a lot of emails on my desk today. But there is a standard agreement that we have been using, and that agreement has been working, if I'm not mistaken. John, I'm still thinking that's all been working just fine with all of our campuses, and the wording in this is going to really doesn't do anything to upset the agreement that we've already put forth, if I'm not mistaken. And I was going to look at that agreement and sign off on it for another year, and it was an agreement that we had made, I think, through a grievance procedure at one time, and then we had come down to an agreement at a level 2 area, and then we had decided it was going to be that the principal was going to decide a location for a particular organization and or vendor to be located, and they weren't going to be doing the solicitation, but it was going to be up to the teachers to go to them, and they would know where that location would be. Don't want to stop that, because I like the opportunity for people to have an insight of going to our associations. But at the same time, the association also knows what the rules are and the regulations, and we've had a good working relationship with this, and I don't want to change that.
So in essence, it's working. It's not fixed, and nothing's going to happen, so we don't really have a problem, right?
No, we don't have a problem.
With that said, I move to approve item 9.
Do I have a second?
I'll
I second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Recommend the Board of Trustees to declare the items listed in the attachment as surplus and or obsolete.
Mr. Springsteen, give us some.
Thank you, Mr. President. Listed, you do have several items that are being declared as obsolete, and the next item after that, of course, I think you have under consent, would be to have the auction that is coming up real soon. Have any questions about any of the items or anything, I would be glad to answer them at this time.
Ms. Garcia?
I do. After reviewing the items that are here, I just think that sometimes maybe there's certain schools that can have use of these items. That's if they're still in good conditions. Instead of us just having to go and just auction them for nothing, maybe some of the campuses can utilize them. I know that in my department I used to get cabinets from somebody else that they needed bigger cabinets, and I just, you know, we need to kind of be a little bit more careful with all the stuff that we're auctioning, because I know that sometimes some of these items could be good for other areas, and I just think that instead of us having to go and spend from our budget, is there a list that goes around maybe, or that you can call the secretaries and say, does your campus need a TV cart? Or, I mean, I just don't think that, I see that some of these things maybe can be used somewhere else.
I will tell you, Ms. Garcia, that I did have a lot of questions myself when I saw that there was 48 gallons of lacquer finish. I was looking at some of these things, 135 gallons of conditioner that was white. I will tell you that anything, according to our auditor's recommendation, that's over 3 years old has to be removed. Paint shelf life is just 1 year. There's a 2-year maximum. After the 2 years, we remove it. Any of the electrical equipment that you see here has been obsolete due to equipment failure, or they do not work properly. I did discuss that with Mr. Arteaga today. Again, they did not put anything on this list that was not working. These are things that were out of working order.
You know what? It's like 8 pieces of 3/4 plywood. What happened? Somebody didn't pay attention. They just overbought plywood, or what? Or is it plywood that was used, and then you're just going to go out there and see if you can get anything out of it?
It's either that or it was under a shelf life.
We just need to be, I think that the filing cabinets, are they really in bad shape that you can't utilize them? That they're really banged up and they're no good? I mean, I can tell you that myself, there was times that I got from other departments that they didn't need. They were buying new items. I would, I was always wanting to take something in my department if I needed. Instead of using it from my budget itself from the department, I would try to get it from somebody else,
You have a good point, because I also used to get some of the things. Can we just let the administration go ahead and of course, vote on it tonight, and have the administration the final check to see, remove any items that are usable, that can be used in the school district, just remove it from the auction. Okay.
Yes, sir, because sometimes what is good for one person is not good for another, because it's sometimes a matter of opinion, like, no, I want a new desk. Well, you're not paying for them, sweetheart. The taxpayers are. So I'd like to make sure that like 197 desks, that they're not salvageable, where a little bit of sanding or just redoing something looks rusty, just somewhere we can fix it. Because if it's cheaper to keep it and it really works, I agree with Ms. Presas and Mr. Aguilar. We need to look at it, at the way times are.
The final check.
Is there a process by which other people in the district that aren't going to be using these items have an opportunity to come and look at them and decide, okay, I would like that, I like that,
These are the questions I even asked Mr. Arteaga. Ray, can you shed some light on some of this for me, please? Because we did talk about this.
Yeah, the items on the agenda there, Mr. Springston, board members, these are mostly items that are broken down. They wind up at Rockwell. Are all of you familiar with Rockwell? Rockwell Warehouse over here behind Pettis Elementary? Okay, these items are picked up by our department on a work order request from either the principal, the assistant principal at the campus, because most of these items are broken down. What we do when we receive the items, we look at the items and we weed them out. We do have a little storage there, so we go ahead and put aside all the items that are good, and we notify administrators at the campuses that if they wish so, go by and take whatever they please, and we'll deliver. The items that we sell, and these items are also looked at by the auditors before we sell them, and these are items that really we cannot use, nobody can use. They're broken down, they're rusted, they create a safety hazard for students. Students can get cut on them, etc. So we do take care, and we are careful on what's being auctioned. It's something that is really not usable. The filing cabinets, I know everybody needs filing cabinets. The ones that we have there, if you all wish to go see them, are rusty. The drawers do not open. They're missing some of the parts, the handles, etc. And it would cost more to repair than to actually replace.
I move to approve.
Before we approve, let me tell you.
Have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Can I just make one last comment, please, to administration? And I agree, there's some things that are not usable, but let's just kind of make sure that we do the right, do the right thing. That's all I'm asking. I mean, I'm not going to tell you what to throw away or what not. Thank
Do I
you.
have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Cortez. Those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Mr. Springston, if you don't mind, just as an example, before I leave, Villanueva Elementary just got a brand-new building, brand-new library. And I know that when you get a brand-new building, you also get the furniture to go along with it. I do know because we took part of renovating or remodeling the old library into an office building. And I looked at the furniture there, and then on the other side of town, we had Sharp Elementary that we were also remodeling the library, and they had requested, or they had asked me, do you know of anybody that has furniture that I can use? Well, Villanueva came to mind, and I told Ms. Trevino, principal of Sharp, you know what, they have a load of furniture over there at Villanueva that you can use. She went by, she talked to Mr. Martinez, and they're going to transfer some of that old furniture. Instead of selling it, going into the auction, now it's going to go over to Sharp Elementary. And we try and do as much of that as we can. I mean, we understand that furniture nowadays, everything is very expensive. So we try and work with principals when we know that there's a need there.
Thank you, Mr. Arteaga. All the board is saying is make sure that what we have there is not usable. It cannot be used in anything. We can start here all night, all good examples, but
thank you, sir.
The fact still remains that the board would like for the administration to look at those items and to see that if they're not good, of course, send it. If they can be used somewhere else, let's use it, okay?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arteaga.
Thank you, sir.
Item 16, recommend approval to authorize administration to accept Mitty A. Pullum Elementary School as substantially complete.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. We're just about ready. I know we've had some visitations at this school. We're looking at substantial complete, if I'm not mistaken, on the 10th and or the 11th. Working with the architect who is here and our construction folks, we are looking at this date so that we can actually work through purchasing to have all of our furniture delivered after this date, because once we accept it as administration accept it as substantial complete, we can actually start moving in the furniture during that 4 or 5 days before the teachers and the students come in, or the teachers come in on the 17th and be ready for the kids when they return. I have several people in the audience that are here to answer any questions. Mr. Tapia is here, and we've been viewing the school. They've already started on the floor, carpeting in the library, the different rooms. I've already seen the rooms with the floor with the coating and the wax. It's just a matter of moving ahead over the next several days, and I've got some assurances from our people working this site that that's going to take place.
My question is define substantial.
Substantial means that it will be ready for us to occupy, put in furniture with a punch list of items that need to be finished.
Does anyone have the list now?
No, ma'am, not that I'm aware of.
Mr. Tapia? That's where my problem lies, substantial. How big are the problems, and when was the last time you went to visit it? Being we're already in August and we anticipate moving in by the 17th, what exactly does it lack?
Thank you, Mr. Springston, President Aguilar, members of the school board. This agenda item tonight is not to accept the building as substantially complete because it's not ready. But we also couldn't wait for the 18th board meeting because it's too late. So we're caught in between the two board meetings. We're asking the school board to authorize the administration to accept it sometime late next week, which is a week prior to the next board meeting. When we recommend substantial completion acceptance, we attach a punch list item from the architects and the engineers as to what the pending items are. So we're going to be working on that next week.
Does anyone have a list now?
No.
Being that it's so close and
Nope.
this item is on the board agenda, what is lacking at this point? Did anyone go out this week knowing that this was going to be presented to us tonight so they could give us a list of what they see that's
Yes,
lacking?
there's just too many items to list. I mean, they start working on one corner of the building, they start marking things, 2 hours later they go back, some of those things may already be complete. It's just so much work going on at one time. So we want to wait till a lot of the work's done, so there's very little items to write down that are obviously not complete. Maybe there's a scratch on the wall, there's maybe a little window pane missing from a door, there might be a chip block, things like that. Right now, there's too many items that we know are just not complete. It's not worth spending hours and hours of work if 2 days later, half of that work's done.
And we do know for a
Tapia.
fact.
Mr. Tapia, I visited all the school construction, I think it was Friday afternoon, and I went to see Pullman myself, and there's a lot of work to be done in front of the building, and I don't know if it's going to be finished by the 17th or whenever in between, whatever date you wanted to move in. I'm concerned about the safety of our faculty going to a building and having to go through areas that are not completed. Same thing with Raquel de Peña out here. The whole entrance is way from being completed on the side, some of the side of the buildings. So sometimes we need to be careful how we're going to say substantially completed and let our personnel going in with so many hazards around. And that's my only concern about the health of our faculty moving in or moving furniture. Dr. Escobedo?
Thank you, Mr. President. I mean, this is common practice to accept things as substantially complete. And all it does, if I understand correctly, is it gives us certain authorization to go into another phase, another level. It doesn't mean that employees are going to go in or students are going to go in. It doesn't hold it doesn't release the contractor from any responsibility whatsoever. It's just a stepping stone for us to move on with the process. So whether or not we have the punch list, I mean, we can see it for our own edification, but it doesn't really matter as far as the process, because it's not giving the contractor any more leadway or it doesn't make us lose any certain rights of any sort. It's just a formality. Am I correct?
Dr. Escobedo, we understand that. At least I do understand that.
And so do I.
But when the administration says we want our administration and some of these people to walk in the building, see, there's a difference. I understand your punch list. We've done it for years. But when the administration says they will be coming in and then he gives a certain date, that means 10 days or 12 days from now, I wonder how safe it is for people going into the building. That's all it is. If they can assure me that this can happen, there's no violations of health safety regulations, like always, we accept it, no?
Mr. Aguilar, if I may. And that is my concern, the liability. And we're like you mentioned it right now, a point that you made right now. Well, because time's coming, like we're rushing. And I'm a little bit concerned with that because I have moved into brand new buildings that we ended up at the end. It was horrible because we're kind of a little bit rushing. And it depends, because one administration say, go in, but there's a mess. You go in and take that stuff in there. I think it's safe. And at the end, we got workman's comp issues, and that's what I want to avoid. That's my concern.
You know, I understand both of your concerns, but I agree with Dr. Escobedo that I don't think administration would let any staff go in there if they feel there's any kind of safety hazard that will be posed to any staff or student. You know, at this point, I'd be more inclined just to approve item 16.
And it's not that we don't want to approve it, Mr. Cortez. I don't know if I'm making myself clear. I just want an assurance that there's safety, because never in the past have they said our administrator is going to go in ahead of time. And this is what Mr. Sprinton and Mr. Tapia said today. That's all we're saying. Of course, we trust that what they're doing is correct. But if
Was that a motion?
Can I,
we have a motion.
no, can I have my turn, please? May I? Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Tapia, you know that when I worked with you, we had that experience of the high school and so forth. And my biggest fear is that if these contractors, I know that their timings are the essence, there's a time frame, but I think teachers are supposed to be reporting to work on the 24th, if I'm not mistaken. What is it, the 17th?
The 17th.
Are these contractors working up to Saturdays? What are their schedules with their crew? Because obviously I know that there was some rain days. But, they knew the timing was coming. They knew that we had to be ready and prepared to open up those campuses. Now, I think safety is a big thing here that also do all of them. Also, the employees are going to be around our students have we done? I think there's a Senate bill, I can't remember which one, that they have to have background check if they're going to be around our students. Do we have that also, if some of these contractors are going to be around our students? I think it's more of a concern that we have, Mr. Tapia, and I think that everybody should have been ready and prepared to be ready for the opening date. And if not, then we should have been told a long time ago, because I understand punch list and substantial completion. I worked with you almost 4 years, sir. I know how it works. So trust me, I understand where you're coming from, where the contractor's coming from, where the architect is coming from. But I think number one is the safety. And what if something happens, then accountability. I don't think that they're going to want to be held accountable. So can you respond to me? How many days of the week have they been working?
Yes, they've been working 7 days a week for several weeks now. Something else that I would like to add is that this Thursday, we're having our Bond Oversight Committee meeting at 5:30. We're going to be meeting at Pullum for our 17 community members to see the school, see the condition of the school. They're also going to be involved. They're going to walk through it. Any safety issues, if there's any safety issues, it will not be recommended to accept it. Also, the city has to issue its certificate of occupancy, pass all the inspections from the fire department signing off, city building, plumbing, electrical, mechanical, all the trades are inspected for approval. So without that certificate, we will not recommend that it be opened. And if the bond committee feels there's too many things pending, they will also recommend to the board not to.
Well, it's going to be up to the boards, Mr. Tapia. If it's possible, if we go ahead and approve it, if they can, mark those areas that the administration should not go into as a safety hazards, I think that would help us a lot. Mr. Cortez?
I move to approve item 16.
Have a motion. Second. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
Ma'am?
Item 17, recommend approval to authorize administration to not build Daniel Breeden Elementary School, number 144, and to notify Janak and Associates of termination of architectural contract in accordance with the owner-architect agreement.
Mr. Springton?
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. This was an item that we did bring to the last board meeting, and it was asked to make sure that we went through legal counsel, that we were doing everything appropriately. We have done so, and everything is approved. Everything can be approved as written.
The concern I had more than anything was if we terminate the contract, if we decide to actually build this building somewhere else, some other property that we buy or whatever, a different location, are we going to have to RFP it again and go through all that to get a different architect, or can we just continue with this architect? I didn't like the language terminate. I guess I preferred the language to suspend it and cease any more work on it and pay him what's due up to now. And then if we ever get this building going again, we'll get Janak to continue.
Mr. Aguilar?
Cortez?
Yeah. I wasn't at the last meeting. Can somebody tell me what's happening with Daniel Breeden Elementary and why you guys want to authorize not to build?
You didn't read your minutes?
No.
I mean, so
You voted not to, there was that item with the city. They wouldn't give us a permit.
Right.
And the board majority voted not to deal with the city, so we can't build a school because we can't get the permits if we build it.
But we can go beyond that one guy who said they won't issue the permit. We could take it to the city commission. I don't think the city commission would deny building a school if the district needed it. I mean, just because one person in I forgot what department he was with. If that's the case, I mean, I just want clarification. Is it because of that issue that the district?
Mr. Cortez, there was another more serious issue in terms of the shift in the population of school children. That by the time we finished building that school, the shift of the student had shifted to another direction of town, that we felt that perhaps we would build that school and it'd be useless to us. And that's why if the word is suspended for the time being, until whenever we can, to see where the trend of young people are going, that we relieve the, I think it was Hudson and what's the other elementary school? Paredes.
Paredes, and we have Gallegos there too.
Gallegos. That was the reason. You're talking about those housing that is right in the corner I don't know what the filling stations there, all that area in the Hassan Estates, within a year, those will be going to a middle school. And there was a huge number. And it was not going to help us any in reducing the population of the 3 elementary school. That was the reason, the main reason. And I forgot there were 3. Mr. Springton, perhaps you can give us the other one.
We were looking at the pricing, we were looking at our budget, we were looking at funding, we were looking at saving some funds, we were looking at the number of kids that were, or students, I should say, that were living in that area, in that zone, how old that zone is, and what are the age group of those children, and within a few years, we figured we would be busing more kids into that school than kids that lived in that zone. And so we were looking at finance, we were looking at the practicality, and we were looking at the possibility of other locations that might be more practical to relieve that area in the future, and also relieve some other areas. And we were just looking at that total picture. And then that other thing that we had talked about that Dr. Escobedo had mentioned also came up into the picture also. So we talked about this the last meeting, but we also wanted legal to take a look at the wording and the contract itself, and that was done. Any comments, Mr.
Mr. President, Mr. Springston, the contract provides for a 7-day out period. I've discussed with Mr. Saez right before the meeting some of his concerns about that, and Mr. Tapia and I had a very similar discussion, and I posed some very similar questions to him. And from what based on the experience of these situations occurring, number one, the contractor would be we do have the right to terminate or suspend the contract, and if the wording needs to be, or the board's desire is to change it to suspend, it can be. And Mr. Tapia, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that we've had the experience of doing this before. The contractor is entitled to be paid for whatever services that he has completed to date. And my understanding that's the design and construction phase has almost been completed. Is that right, Mr. Tapia? Construction documents? Right. And so that money has been earned by the architect and needs to be paid. And from what I've been told is that these projects can be restarted with a minimal fee. There may be some adjustment that may be needed if there's a resite because of utilities and that type of stuff that may be different. But certainly the district would have the opportunity to legally pick up where it left off in terms of the relationship with the architect.
Mr. Cortez.
I guess that your last comment there, Mr. Saldana, feeds into what Mr. Saez said a minute ago. The background says that the plans and specifications are 100% complete. So if the district's position is we do want to build a school, but we just don't want to build it on that site, the district now is going to be seeking an alternate site to build elementary 144. And at that point, I mean, are we going to start all over again and just all this money that we've already spent for the work already done? Is it wasted money? I mean, or does this architect pick up where they left off on this project, just moving to a different location?
It would be called a resite. Am I correct, Mr. Tapia? It's just called a resite. Now then, as far as the land itself, that is something. If we stop and it is approved, then that is something that we can also put back up for sale to recoup those monies that we have already spent, and then we look for other pieces of land that we might want to look at that might be more feasible for a resite for that school.
I think I have to agree with Mr. Saez on the wording. You know, if that's the intent of the district, then I think it should be written more in that fashion. Then down the road, you know, maybe another board has an opportunity to select another architect, and everything that we've already spent, that the district's already paid, is just wasted money, and then we're double paying, and there's a set of blueprints that are sitting there. I know that this happened once before. I don't know, maybe Mr. Escobedo, you recall, maybe it was even before you came. There was plans drawn up for the Palo Alto Service Center, and they were never used. And then we had to go, maybe it was before you guys came along also. I remember there was discussion about that. And then we put that out for bid again, and then they had to pay an architect to do a complete redesign because the plan that was done maybe a decade ago wasn't.
You're correct. It has happened in the past.
And I would
years
hate for
ago.
that to happen, and we're just, throwing money away.
It happened in Cameron Park also. We're going to build a school and just fizzled out, and we lost a lot of money. Went to court, we lost. Anyone
Mr.
else, Ms.
President?
Peña?
So then what I hear is that we just want to be careful on how we word it, that if we can not terminate it, but maybe just cease or stop it for now.
Mr. Saldaña?
What is the legal term for pause?
Suspend.
There you go.
Use, just instead of terminate, use the word suspend. However, as a practical matter, ladies and gentlemen, as the time before the time between the suspension and the reinitiation, as that gets larger, the attendant fees of a recite due to either changes in building codes,
Increase.
reciting problems that may be permitted will increase as well. And I'm sure Mr.
So terminate would cut our costs. Am I correct?
No.
It'd be the same whether we terminate or suspend, right?
Exactly.
If I may add, I'm not sure, if we decide to build this school in the future, we could certainly reuse this plan and continue to pay the phases that are not done and maybe some extra changes for redesign on the site. But it's also possible that we could pick another plan, maybe the Raquel Peña, the Keller, the Pullum, Ortiz, Ben Bright. We have several options. If we buy a site that this plan does not work on and doesn't fit correctly where another school does, then we will never go back to this. We'll hire someone else and do a recite with someone else. So it is very possible this is a termination if we don't ever go back to this architect and these set of plans. Just like the Palo Alto Center, we didn't go back to that architect.
How much have we spent already on this architect? How much have they been paid by BISD?
The fees were $690,000. If we pay them up to the plans, which where we are right now, we only owe them $5,520 after today's payment, and that'll close them out. And there'll be $241,500 for the bidding phase and the construction observation phase that we will not pay. That's money we're saving. So from $690 to $240, that's what we have paid. It'd be $450,000 that we have paid up to date.
So we've spent about $450,000.
That's
You're
right.
saying if the district decides they want to do a recite of Peña as opposed to what they designed for 144, what happens to that 450? I mean,
It's
we
just,
still have to pay a recite of, what is that, 4 or 5%? Was what an architect charges for a recite?
no, not necessarily, because this is not a recite, because the recite is you're reciting something that's already built.
Right,
This
but don't
this
they
was
charge
never
for,
built.
isn't just a smaller, lesser
So you
percentage?
you just renegotiate to pay the remaining $276,000 for the, I'm sorry, $34,000 to bid the project, to get the plans and specs bid out and reviewed and ranked and all that. And then you pay $207,000 for construction observation, because you've already paid the other phases. And then there'll probably be some additional fees for the civil engineering, that the traffic layout will probably change, the landscape package, the utilities, and depending if the foundation is different, there might be some changes in the foundation design. So there'll be little extra charges, but it won't be the full fee that you see here. Going to another architect using their plans recite, normally we pay 6 to 6.5% for a new design. Recite any of the other architect schools, we can pay anywhere from 4.25 to 4.5 for recites. But if we don't ever use this again, this money is pretty much gone, lost.
And that's what I want to see if we can avoid, us throwing $450,000 down the drain, to make sure that, I mean, obviously there's a need, there's overcrowded schools. If administration doesn't believe that's the location, is there going to be a location soon? Do you still plan on, if there's a shift in population, do you still intend on building elementary 144, or do you plan on just suspending the project?
Definitely.
Definitely, I mean, what is it that you actually have planned, Mr. Springston?
In the plans, we did actually had a process in mind that we wanted to look at a different location for 144, and I even talked with members of the family, Breeden family. I talked with a member, excuse me, and I let them know that this was an agenda item that we were looking because of the location, because of the proximity of where the kids were located, and that when we started this project again as a 144 process, that we would continue with the Breeden family's heritage, but it could be in a different location. I thought it was the professional thing to do, to be able to sit down and talk with at least someone from that family that we're looking at different alternatives. Whether y'all pass this or whether we continue building, we will. But we wanted to look at some different alternatives, and I wanted to bring those alternatives to you just by looking at the area, the location of where the school is being built, the entrances all off 802, the flow of traffic in and out of that area alone, and a little bit later down the road, seeing that that is going to be more of a busing site, that will be busing kids instead of being a neighborhood school, that it will be a site that we're actually going to be busing a lot of kids to. And I looked at it, and I looked at different locations and talked with Mr. Tapia. Then we looked at the 12 million that we still had left over that we could undesignate from that area. And looking at our economy the way it is today, that it might be something that we would look at, and hopefully, if it was something that was approved, land that we could end up selling. How many acres are we talking about there, Oscar? 10 acres. That if it was something that we would undesignate, and we could actually sell that land, and we would have to sell it at the appraised value, and doing that, then hopefully finding some other location that might be more suitable for our children at that time.
President, I have a question and then a comment. If we suspend this, Mr. Saldana, do we need to specify a time limit?
No, sir. I don't think that you would.
And
But
indefinitely.
again, I think that the architect that we're dealing with is an established firm and has been around for a long time, and there's no indication that it won't be. And as far, it's not really that much of a legal issue. It's more of a, budgetary and policy issue in terms of what this board wants to do and this administration wants to recommend in this respect. The relationship, as I understand it, in discussion with Mr. Tapia with the architect's firm is good. And so if we were to quickly utilize these plans again, the relationship could be reestablished, for smaller fees. But the point that I'm making is simply that as from the date of suspension or termination to the time that these plans are utilized again, the more time that goes by, the more associated cost would be even to reinstitute those plans because of changes in building code, changes in traffic patterns, resite issues that may occur in terms of utilities and that type. So if you use these plans 5 years from now, as opposed to using them 6 months from now, there's going to be a difference, and this is not really that much of a legal issue. As you get more remote down the road, then you get into issues of the viability of the architectural firm itself, all right, and the ownership of the documents.
Right. Would it be perhaps wiser to terminate it and then reinstate it when the time comes, rather than to just keep it suspended and have it up in limbo for who knows how many years?
It really wouldn't matter. It doesn't matter from a legal standpoint whether it's suspended,
But what
because
about
it
a
could always be
practicality
terminated, because there's provisions in the contract where if the architect's not doing anything, then he has a right to say, I'm terminating the contract as well.
It
All
just
right.
seems odd to have a contract suspended, for who knows whether it's 1 year, 5 or 10 or 50 years. It just doesn't quite sound right. And a comment, that's why I would feel more comfortable terminating it and reactivating it when the time comes. And as far as finding another piece of land, I think we have to, no ifs, ands, or buts, find a land that accommodates these plans. We can't just lose these plans of $450,000 because of the land that we bought, that purchase does not accommodate it. I think that's a must, and we need to always keep that in mind when we go out searching for land, because it's a lot of money to just not take advantage of it. You know, and I'm sorry that this happened. I really didn't see this coming, and I don't know exactly when we detected this, but you know, I was beyond shocked. But I think that's just a must. We have to accommodate these plans no matter what at any given time.
Yes, and I do.
Mr. Springston and Mr. President, I think we need more time to review this. I think that all of us feel a little bit uncomfortable with the whole situation. Obviously, our questions are not clearly answered. We're like going back and forth, and it's just, I don't even feel comfortable making a decision on this item today.
Mr. Aguilar, if I may. Ladies and gentlemen, the issue here is that at this point in time, economically, it's not feasible to add another school. We already have 3 coming up. It's very true. I visit those locations. I know a lot of the kids that live in that neighborhood. They're up and coming, and we won't have the kids walking to school, the students, I'm sorry. Mr. Springston is very correct in stating we're going to end up busing the students there, and the traffic flow on that street, as you and I both know, is horrific. Now, we're not saying we're not going to build it, but we have to be wise with the times, the economy, the way it stands, and we have 3 elementaries within a mile radius from that neighborhood. We definitely do not need another one at this time. So no one's saying we just like, no, we decided we're not going to build it. It's not feasible and a smart thing to do at this time. Now, to say we're going to terminate, we could come back in 3 years and right there at the same location, like Mr. Cortez mentioned, somebody at the city, they could be changed. They changed their way of thinking. We're back as planned. Maybe there's growth there that we didn't anticipate, but we're just asking for now, let's terminate it and not build it. Otherwise, we're going to be held to building it next year or the year after that, and we really, at this time, don't need it at that location. And that is not something difficult to swallow. It's a responsible thing to do.
Mr. Cortez.
Well, I think the other issue, Ms. Peña, is, you know, Mr. Springston just made a comment that maybe undesignate that $12 million. Well, by undesignating it, then you're saying you're not going to build that school anymore. And that I'm not okay with. I mean, sure, you've got Gallegos, Hudson, and Paredes all within a certain proximity. Great, they made exemplary. That's awesome. But you've got 2 of those schools that I know for sure are above 1,200 population. You know, that's unacceptable. That's unacceptable. That's a middle school ADA, you know, size. For an elementary, that's unacceptable. And we need to do something to relieve the overcrowding at those facilities. And I think it would be equally responsible of this district to undesignate those funds. You know, just because they rate the highest possible rating doesn't mean that we're going to say, okay, well, you guys are already doing great academically. We're going to just put you on the sideline until we figure out what we're going to do and undesignate that money. And then possibly risk just having tossed $450,000 down the drain. You know, I don't think that's appropriate either.
Mr. Aguilar and Mr. Cortez, Mr. Springston, I'm not in favor of undesignating. I'm just maybe looking at the location with the legal ramifications and the way we're being strong-armed. That's what I'm looking at. Building it, yes, we need to build it with time, but we need to look at maybe another location. So no, I'm not looking at undesignating that. I'm looking at not building it there now in this day and age. You never know what the future brings. 2 years down the road, we find property that's equal. We can sell this property if need be, and someone would come and pay us what we paid for it, and we do build the school. So I'm for building it, just not right now, Mr. Cortez.
The legal issue, I think I'm very comfortable with it because it's legal. I think the question here is, are we going to be committed to build a school in the near future? And the near future could be next year, 6 years from now. But the way I understood the administration talking about it is that then starting as soon as possible, they start looking for the piece of land that would make it feasible in that area that would release the pressure of those 3 elementary schools. I can agree to. And it's not only, I know it hurts, $450,000, it's not. But then long term, we build a school and the population is not there. Look at all the busing. And busing is very expensive. And the busing itself we don't get reinforced by the state. Is that correct, Mr. Reese? We only given so much for transportation? And
Mr. President, Mr. Springston, board members, yes, we get reimbursed only a certain percentage by the state, and it's a real small percentage really of
Yes.
the whole budget.
yes, and then we have to, supplement this, whatever the expense might be. And it's not going to be a low expense, I can guarantee you that, because most of the kids will be bus, you see. So definitely it makes sense. I know it hurts, but then again, I have the confidence in the administration that starting tomorrow or this week, they start looking.
Put a for sale sign on the other one, right?
Well, I don't know about that. I'm
We
not
can
into,
get the ball rolling.
Mrs. Garcia would have to advise on this. I don't know if we can do that or not.
I don't think we'd get our monies for that.
Yeah, neither do I.
But it goes back to my comment, if we look for land that accommodates the plans, we won't lose the $450,000.
No, sir.
Correct.
And the school will still be named Daniel Breeden, the name's gonna follow it no matter where and no matter
We
when.
don't have a problem with keeping the name, and it's the situation that we find ourselves in right now. That's what it is.
And this is something that we've been visiting on for a couple of months. We've talked about it during our budget process. We talked about ways that we were going to save here, look at the different projects that we're doing in different areas. This is something that we looked at with Ms. Fox. We've talked about it with the zoning. We looked at the kids. We've had Mr. Estrada come over and try to look at it as far as where the kids are coming from. How many kids are we going to be busing there in the future? What's that school going to look like in the next 3 years, next 5 years? How many buses are we going to have to bring in? Look at the location. This is something that we have talked about. I think the last time that we talked, except for Mr. Cortez, who was not here, it was more or less the language, whether or not the language was something that was sufficient. The whole plan here is that we know that Hudson and we know that Paredes has way too many kids. The plan was to be able to take those kids and be able to move them and section them off to where we could have 3 schools with some equal enrollment, at least somewhere close to that. And I just don't see that happening with us busing and the contract and the things that we have going on with the city and non-negotiables and those types of things. We've got that money set there. When I say undesignate, I'm talking about undesignate for that school only. It means we can redesignate for the school wherever that site may be.
Mr. President, Mr. Springston, so then, is it necessary to undesignate it because the next school build 144 will be Daniel Breeden, so the money will be designated as is? And I wanted to pose this question to our attorney, Mr. Saldaña. The way the question is, the way the motion is read, it doesn't say anything about undesignating the money, so.
That's correct.
So if we move to approve the way it stands, it has nothing to do with the undesignated money. That would have to come later and be a different motion and be approved. Am I correct?
That would be for the administration to bring in terms of budgetary.
They would have to bring it before us in the future if that was the case. So if we vote,
This is strictly
Right.
about the architect's contract.
I would like
That's really not the issue here that's being.
okay. I would like to make a motion that we approve number 17.
They move to approve. Do I have a second? Do I have a second? Third time?
I'll second the motion.
All right, it's been seconded by Dr. Escobedo. Those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay, thank you.
Item 22, recommend approval of budget amendment number 16 in the amount of $32,603,995 for Fund 199, Local Maintenance Construction Funds, Local Maintenance Reserve Fund balance.
Mr. Springton, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I knew when I saw that 32 million, I said, it's going to be circled. I told that to the cabinet.
Mr. Saez.
Just as soon as I saw that number, it was going to be circled. Mr. Reese, I'll go ahead and we'll answer this for you, but go ahead. Go ahead and let him know where all
What's
these
going on
funds
with
are.
$32 million, Mr. Reese?
Mr. Aguilar, Mrs. Springston, board members, these are amounts that have been reserved by prior board members over the years, and they've been carrying our general ledgers now for quite a few years, as you can see. But if you have more specific questions, I have Mr. Tony Fuller is present, and he can probably elaborate a little bit more than I can on these.
Mr. Fuller?
You've got funds here from 2001, 2002 renovations. You've got years of designated funds. Can you give us some more background on these funds, sir?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Springston, Mr. Aguilar, other members of the board. Good evening.
Good evening.
To my document real quick. Basically, what we do is when we designate these construction projects, we retain the fiscal year that they're funded in. For example, the first one on the second page is fiscal year 2001, 2002, the Transportation Department renovation, which is the main bus barn. Basically, back in that time frame, we designated approximately $1.8 million for this project. And we retain it there because we bring a document, a budget amendment to designate fund balance for these projects. If you go down to the next fiscal year, 2004-05, you can see the wings, addition of Pace, Falk, and Stale. Now, that's a different story. First of all, we did designate those funds in that time frame, but those projects are now completed. These are residual funds that are now still designated for those projects, yet we have not moved them. We will come to you as a administration with a recommendation to redesignate those to other projects where we feel they're needed. It could be in the area of ADA projects, perhaps. We still have some work to do in that area. Parking lot projects. We have a tennis court, the 8th tennis court at Porter, I believe it is. And we also have the water line at the new high school. So we will come to the board with a recommendation to redesignate from that project to other projects. And that's what they're for. We just keep track of the funding year that we designated those projects.
But they keep, the way they're at, they keep the designation. In other words, for instance, go specifically to, it's page 282 on our backup, and it says fiscal year 2007 through 2008, elementary 144, 12,124,922.
Yes.
You see that?
Yes.
Okay. If we approve this, that money stays designated for that project?
Yes, since we bring a document for board approval to designate these projects, then to undesignate them, we will bring a document back for board approval to undesignate them and at the same time redesignate them to other projects.
So everything that's listed on these pages stays designated for the specific project that's listed here?
The specific project and for the specific funding year.
And is this considered some of your categorical fund balance that you often refer to?
No, this is not categorical. It's a reserve of fund balance for construction projects that have been designated throughout the years.
And is the purpose for this just for your accounting purposes?
It's accounting purposes, but it's also, like I said, we bring a document to the board to designate for projects. This way, we're letting you know that these projects are still designated, and in time, we will come back and designate them and redesignate them elsewhere.
And in that 32 million is the school that we just finished talking about, right?
Yes, and that's the one that Mr. Zais referred to.
designation. That's what he was saying.
Elementary 144. Again, we haven't really done much in the total project except have a few payments. Also, if you look at the next year, 2008-09, you can see the service center. Where we just started that approximately, 6-8 months ago, roughly. Again, these funds have not been encumbered, thus we have to bring them into this fiscal period.
Mr. Aguilar, Mr. Springston, Mr. Fuller. Looking at this, and I see the asterisk on other, and other has large sums next to it, especially for 141, 173,000. Then we go down to 2008-07, other 20,000, 2008-09, 40,000, and on other reimbursement testing surveying. Now, does that mean that the departments that use this can freely take that money for testing, reimbursements, reimbursables, surveying, without having to come before the board if we approve this? Or do we still see that bill, once it gets established, to be approved to pay? Because other is really broad. So how does that get dispersed when it says other and testing, surveying, and reimbursables? How does that work? If you look on, I don't know if you have the same thing I do.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, how does that work when paying those out? Is that something that's just approved by the finance department, or does it come before the board to let you know that this money is being pulled towards that? If we approve it as it stands tonight, does that pretty much give you the authority and the responsibility without us having to see it in the future? How does that work? Can you explain that?
No, ma'am, this is just the funding of any type of soil testing, concrete testing, and so forth. Mr. Tapia will still come to the board if he needs the air quality testing or soil testing through his process. But when these come up, we have the funding other. We can, let's say we also need a fence, maintenance department needs a fence to put up around a campus. Mr. Arteaga will come to me, I need $30,000 for a fence, and that's what we use these other funding funds for.
So in other words, they have where to pull from to come to us to ask for it to be approved. That's why it's designated in that manner? Is that the?
Yes,
okay,
but
the objective?
again, they'll still go through the normal procurement process for these services or materials.
Okay, thank you.
How much more money is out there besides these $32 million?
Basically, this is Fund 199, which is our local discretionary funds. Within the other budget amendments, you saw they were part of the consent agenda. The same concept, the same philosophy,
For
really.
bond monies, correct?
Yes, the bond monies, the 631, 632, 633s, and 34s.
Aside from the bond, what else is out there besides?
No, this is all the construction funds. We designate these under Function 81, which is construction and renovations.
Okay, I move to approve.
Move to approve, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Peña, those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed?
Item 30, recommend approval to enter into a real estate license, training, and certification contracted service agreement with UTB TSC for students enrolled in International Business Independent Study Program at Rivera High School in the amount of $20,800 from budgeted career and technical education funds. Services to be rendered subject to the district needs and funding.
Mrs. Springton, please.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Any questions? I have Ms. Monfils that can, this is a career in technology. I don't know who had the circle.
Ms. Garcia had the question, she's not in. Anyone else?
I move to approve.
That's been moved to
Second.
approve. Second, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
How sad. Capitalism.
They move fast.
That is very sad. I'm saddened.
Depressing.
38.
And you know who's got your back.
Closed meeting is pursuant to the Texas Government Code, Section 551071, 551072, 551074, 551082, and 551084.
We're back into our regular meeting. Item number 38, Mrs. Perez, Pat?
Recommend approval of probationary contractual personnel for the 2009-2010 school year, specialist in school psychology, intern, subject to receipt of all outstanding documentation.
I move to approve item number 38 and 39.
I'll second.
Motion to be made to approve 38 and 39, second by Mr. Cortez. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Item number 47.
Consultation with attorney regarding pending or threatening litigation matters. Discussion, consideration, and possible action, EEOC, charge number 31C2009-01487C, TWC, charge number 1A90891, grievance, Ermelinda Gil Martinez.
I move to authorize council to settle the grievance and EOC charge in the amount discussed in executive session.
Second.
Been moved and second. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, now 48, item number 48 was table. So let's go back to.
Do we move the table?
Yes, let's have a motion.
Move the table the item to committee.
That's been
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Number 49. Pat?
Discussion, consideration, and possible action on acquisition or sale of real property, beginning 19.289 acres of land out of a 308.92 acre tract described in deed of Pablo Quisel, date July 31st, 1980, from Teneco Realty, Inc., Cameron County Deed Records, Volume 1203, page 11, out of 407.92 acre tract described in deed to Palmetto Corporation, dated November 9, 1964, from Douglas W. Rissinger and wife Eva Lorraine Rissinger, CCDR Volume 776, page 385, being private survey number 642, Cameron County Surveyor Records, Volume A1, page 307, and being known as the MH Cross 406.2 acre tract, Cameron County Supplementary Deed Records, Volume 2, page 265, and part of a 100-foot strip of abandoned railroad right-of-way conveyed to Pablo Quisel on August 12, 1981, from Missouri Pacific Railroad Company, CCDR, Volume 1245, page 308, and Share 22, Espiritu Santo Grant, City of Brownsville, Cameron County, Texas.
I move to authorize the administration to finalize negotiations on the purchase of the described property and authorize the board president to sign the appropriate earnest money documentation. Furthermore, to authorize the earnest money not to exceed the amount discussed in executive session.
Second.
It's been moved to approve item number 49. I have a second. Ms. Peña, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Mr. Sprint announcements.
Back to school. We're here. We've got administrators that started back today. I do want to make a congratulatory note to all the staff here in BISD, administrators, teachers, everyone that works with our children. I know we got our latest tax results back with 84% of our schools being recognized and are exemplary. Job well done. Congratulations to all on the board who supports that endeavor. Okay.
And before I forget, we always recognize our students and teachers. I want to recognize also, congratulate these people that are sitting right here, all these area superintendents. They also took part in what we are today. So we thank you for all the work you do for the district and for our children, for our teachers and all the staff, also for staying here so late at times. I want to thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Those being moved and second to adjourn, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?